And shalom to Ian Ostroff. Ian, thank you for being with us on our special program, Beth Tikvah Initiative, Faces of Beth Tikvah, Conversations that Connect. And
Yeah, thank you for having me.
it's a pleasure to be with Ian Ostroff today. And I thank you so much. I know that Ian, you have become a successful writer, but before we get to the writing, I've heard from people in this city that you are a very, very good basketball player. So why don't we start off by, if you can, tell us a little bit about that part of your life, the basketball.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's funny to reflect upon right now. It's sort of like an ex-girlfriend that, I've had it for 10 years and contributed as much as I could to that relationship. And now I'm sort of looking, backwards on it. So that's kind of nice to do at this moment. But yeah, I mean, I played since I was about 10 years old. I played up until I was about 20 years old. So it's been a long journey. I played intercity at every kind of level. I worked my I worked my behind off to be able to play at Dawson College for about half a semester or about a full year, something like that. So that was kind of nice. And yeah, I mean, I was always an undersized player, and I always had to work a little harder than like the person that was a little bit taller and a little bit stronger than I was. But in the end of the day, I'm very proud of what I was able to accomplish at that time in my life, and it's something that I'm happy to talk about. So.
Yeah, yeah, it sounds like it was an exciting time for you. Do you still play a little bit? Or, I mean, do you still play basketball at all?
Um, it's kind of funny how I've grown up and how I've developed different interests. I mean, I'm still very much into sports, but I'm into surfing lately. That's the last thing that I've been into as of recently. And yeah, I tore my Achilles 3 years ago trying to play basketball again. So that's a whole different story. That's a whole different scenario. But
Sure.
yeah, I mean, I still have my jump shot, so I still have some. There's still some sign that I was a good player, But
Yes.
I probably have to train a little bit harder and have like because I put a lot of effort to being able to be a good basketball player, especially the last couple of years when I was trying to be a college player at Dawson College. So I mean, like in my mind, if you ask me, it's kind of like when I think about basketball, I think about all the work I put in. I think about all the long hours of practicing, all of the waiting too, because I was never really a starter, but I was always like a player that would make an impact on the court and at the intercity level and the college level. So like, sort of like I think about all these memories. I think about all the things that I did to kind of like be where I was, and it would take like a lot for me to get really back into it again. But in terms of playing for fun, yeah, I mean maybe yeah, you know what? You're making me think about it. Maybe like to play for fun again would be nice. So
Yes. Well, we can get a couple of people from Beth Tikva together and have a game.
yeah,
Um,
sure. That'd be cool.
Tell me, so currently you're writing and you seem to be successful at it. How did you get into writing?
Well, long story short, I've always loved stories and I just always wanted to tell them one day. And then I spent the last 8 or 10 years trying to become a good writer. And then eventually I started to get published in different magazines. I mean, I was a journalist for about 2 years. I was like my full-time job for about 2 years. I was a journalist and I worked for a suburban newspaper for about 8 months, which was a nice time. And I've also contributed a lot of freelance articles to like travel websites because I do like to travel. That's something I've been doing the last 3 years or so. It's kind of half my personality at this point. 10 years ago, my personality was sports and basketball. Now it's like traveling and writing. So, I mean, I guess as I evolved, as I said, my interests changed and stuff. But yeah, it's been fun. I mean, I'm starting
Yes.
to get into ghostwriting now. So that means I'm helping other people develop their own books and their own websites and that kind of thing. And I'm also freelancing for a website that talks about Mexican news and for an English speaking audience. So that's really nice too. And yeah, and I published two books independently, and they've done pretty well with reviews, and hoping to do more in the future. So it's
Right.
been a journey, and it's still going. So
And the two books, can you remind us of the titles?
sure. Well, the first one is called "Socially Talented Glenn's Memories." It's a book for a young teen, like an older teen audience. It's about it's about a young person reflecting back on their childhood to kind of think about how they got to the position they are in life. So it kind of goes back to like a time before social media was a big thing amongst young people, and how like that era in history was, and how it kind of circles back to like social media and the phones and the internet and that kind of thing. So that's sort of like the main idea in a short way. And the second one is like a contemporary romance book that took place during pandemic time. So it's a very different story, but the voice is the same. I mean, if you read both my books, like you'll see like it's me writing it. So yeah, that's
Yeah,
the short version. So
I, I read some of the summaries of the books on the website that you have. You have a nice website.
thank you.
Um, and I think the stories take place in Montreal. Is that correct?
The first one does. The second one is, well, it's a Montreal based character, and the characters are from Montreal, but a lot of the story also takes place in Mexico during the pandemic years, towards the end of the pandemic. So that's sort of like it's an interesting setting and an interesting time, because I personally was in Mexico during the pandemic towards the end, and I really experienced it firsthand, what it was like and how different it was, and how people thought about the pandemic and how people thought about life at that particular time. And I really encapsulated that into like the story that I wrote in the second book. And it's not necessarily about that, but that setting and that era is very much, relevant. So it's like that's something I'm actually very proud of in that book, because I think about like all the great writers that I looked up to, and they've always had a way of capturing their era and their life experience and their like their generation into like a story that's uniquely theirs. So
Sure.
and
Who
that
are, who are some of the great writers that you like, that you admire?
it's funny because as I grew older, I started to read more people and have different interests in different authors that I've liked. But some is historically, like I really like F. Scott Fitzgerald, the Great Gatsby, Decided Paradise. Those are two books I really enjoy. So he talks about youth a lot too, and I try to encapsulate that in my books. It's something that I'm very much interested in as well, because I think it's a very eclectic and a very universal topic. I also like, well, he only wrote one book, but J.D. Salinger's Catcher in the Rye is also a very interesting and amazing book in my opinion. I mean, what's funny about that book though, because when you read it as a teenager, it's one story, but then when you read it as an adult, it's very different. You kind of see it differently. You kind
Yeah,
of start to see, because when you're a kid, you kind of associate with the rebellious teenage angst, but then when you're older, you kind of see it from like older perspective. So that's kind of like an interesting, cool book in a way, because it has two different stories depending on who you are. But
yes.
I feel like recently, one of my favorite books right now is called The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. It's an adventure story about the universe, and about like finding yourself, and kind of like following the signs that like the universe is giving you. And it's a very famous book by a Brazilian writer. And
Mhm.
yeah,
Very interesting. I think Catcher in the Rye is considered to be a classic.
it is. Yeah.
And it was also I think it was also one of the books that people tried to ban, because I guess
Hmm.
like you said, there's two sides to how you look at it. But I think if I'm not mistaken, I think I read Catcher in the Rye in high school. I think it was required reading for us. But I don't think J.D. Salinger really did anything after that. That was his big breakthrough, and that was kind of the end of for him. But
Yeah, he's sort of like a textbook hermit, as you would say, someone that just went into hiding after the book came out. I think it was because of the language, because the language used in the book is it's not very PG in a way, so I think
yeah,
that was probably part of it, but also like the content within the book is very controversial as well. So I think
yes.
that's another reason. But
I
I
could
mean,
see I could see how you looked at him as a model for your own style, with the Glenn novels that you've been writing about the first one, because
yeah,
it's
because there's something very unapologetically honest about the voice too, and I feel like as a teenager, as a young person reading it, you really associate with it, and there's also a lot of very universal topics within the book too, But
yeah,
it's funny when I read it the second time. I read it the second time recently, just because I was, just for fun. I was looking for a new book to read, and one thing that was very interesting is because in the book, like JD, like Poland Caulfield kind of disappeared for 2 days into New York City in the 1950s. And I don't know, in 2024, like with the phones and with social media, I don't think he could just disappear the way that he did. You know what I mean? Like it would be so much easier to track someone, you know? So like you think about things like that, and you're like, oh, okay, like you kind of think about the plot holes in 2024, but
Yes.
you have to think, but sometimes, but that's one of the magical things about books, if you ask me, you know, kind of sucks you into a different world and a different perspective. And,
Yeah.
you know,
Sure.
you just kind of have to like, you know, accept it for how it is and try to, you know, so, and
Yeah,
also
absolutely.
it's also a very interactive medium too, because it's like when you're watching something, you're kind of like consuming the content, but when you're an active participant in the story when you're reading it, because it's your interpretation in the end of the day. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now your books are I know are available, I guess, um, in digital form too, right? You don't
yeah,
have to. They're not. You don't have to have the book. You can do the
yeah,
online version.
yeah, of course. I mean, there's the ebook, there's the physical copy. You can get on Amazon. You can get on basically anywhere where online books are sold. So yeah,
Yeah, excellent, excellent. You know, in our short time together, you mentioned Mexico a little bit. I know your mom Sandra is from Mexico. I know your father because I see your father very often at the Minion. He's a strong supporter of our daily morning Minion, but he also talks about Mexico a lot. So I guess that's part of your life, I guess, because of where your mom is from.
yeah. I mean, that's where a lot of my family is from too. I mean, I grew up with the Mexican Jewish side of my family, like from when I was a kid up until this day. So for me, it's very much something that I care about deeply, and something I consider Mexico very much a second home because of those experiences that I had in the past, and also the experiences I have presently as well. And you know, like it's really, you know, I've really improved my Spanish over the years too, to really communicate with my cousins and my family a lot easier. And
Mm.
I started to see other parts of Mexico too, like on my own and with some friends and with my brother at times. And yeah, you know, and like there's also a very present, I mean, some people don't realize it, but there is a very present Jewish community within Mexico too. And you know, there's a lots of, I mean, one of the first major broadcasters in Mexican history was a Mexican Jewish person. And Frida Kahlo, a very famous cultural figure, like her father was a Jewish immigrant that came over to Mexico in the early 19th century. So there are signs, and there is
Yeah.
signs of Jewish life in Mexico that some people don't know. And I encourage any Jewish person, part of the community watching this, to go visit Mexico and just find out for yourself, because it is a beautiful place to visit. You know, don't listen to all the bad stuff on the media and stuff. Just, you know, take it from my perspective, you know, if
I,
anything else.
I think there was just a recent election where a Jewish Mexico elected a Jewish president, I believe.
Yeah.
Uh, that just
Cla-
happened maybe a month
Claudia
ago.
Sheinbaum. Yeah. That's,
Interesting.
I'm not very, I don't know a whole lot about the situation because I don't live in Mexico. I mean,
Yeah,
that's one thing you'll never hear me say. I mean, you have to live in the place to really understand the impact. So I can't say I understand 100% what's going on, but I do, you know, like with every new like president or prime minister, there's always like one side that loves that they're elected, and there's a side that doesn't like that
yeah,
they're elected. So I
yeah,
mean,
yeah. I was going to ask you just to get back to basketball for a second. What's your favorite NBA team that you follow?
I
Uh,
mean, you know what? 10 years ago, I liked the Boston Celtics because Ray Allen used to be one of my favorite players, because he was a traditional shooter, and that's what I used to be. I had a very, that was one of the strongest parts of my game. And anyone who remembers seeing me play, or anyone that's played against me, knows that like I had a very good streaky jump shot, and that was basically Ray Allen's game. So I looked up to him a lot because I emulated my game. You know what's
yeah,
funny? I mean, if I was playing basketball now, the game would suit me a lot better, because now like it's either like you go into the paint and you dunk the basketball, or you shoot the three, you know. And I
yeah.
was a very good 3 point shooter, so maybe I was born 10 years
Right.
too early, you know. But yeah, I mean,
That-
honestly, like I think right now, after the Raptors won the championship, it was the first Canadian team that won a championship, and seeing how the city came together for that, and seeing like that whole like journey from like, you know, the playoffs to like the championship. And there's a lot of controversy about that, because Golden State's team was like basically all injured when the Raptors won. But you know, as like I'm a very big advocate about like basketball in Canada as well, because I feel like we have a lot to offer, and it was nice to see a Canadian team win, you know. So I
Yes,
think
yes.
I think these days I'm definitely for the Raptors. I'm leaning more towards that side, but I used to be a Celtics fan, so I guess I'll say both. I'll say both just for
Yes.
the sake of the interview.
Yeah. No, the first time that you and the first time that I met you was at a Beth Tikvah Young Professional Sukkah dinner that was coordinated by Adam Luxembourg and his wife Sydney. And I met you there, which was a very nice evening. We were all in the sukkah together. And I think it would be nice if we continue doing these young professional programs at Beth Tikvah. I think it's important for the community,
Yeah,
and
I agree.
hopefully we
I,
can we can keep that momentum going a little bit.
I definitely agree, because one thing that I've learned about, the tragedy of October 7th and all the raging anti-Semitism that I've been seeing everywhere, not just in Montreal, but like globally too. I feel like it's more important than ever for young Jewish people and Jewish people of all ages and colors and sizes to, come together and to have a strong and to form stronger ties of community and that kind of thing. So I definitely agree. I think it'd be good to have more community dinners and more community events and have more opportunity for people to come together and, talk about these subjects, because I mean, in my city, like I live a pretty secular Jewish life. So like I have Jewish friends, but I also have like non-Jewish friends, and I work with Jewish people, I work with non-Jewish people, and just I see a lot more Jewish people supporting like Israel and like against anti-Semitism opposed to like people that are not Jewish. And I feel like that's very sad, honestly. And I feel like we need each other more than ever. So to tie
Sure.
back to what you just said, I feel like it is very important to do that. And I think on my part as well, I feel like I have to put more of an effort to go to these Jewish events and to, schmooze and like network and, like
Sure. Sure.
let people know that I'm around and that I'm like supporting their causes. And even with like the other guests that you just showed me, like Adam Gorin, I mean, I've never met the guy, but I mean, if he has an event that I should know about, I would definitely love to go. And I'm sure there's many other people like him in the city and
Yes.
around us, So I think it's definitely very important to show support, but also to like reach out to like our Jewish brothers and sisters too, because I feel like sometimes there's events that happen that not everyone knows about. So if we spread the word and we kind of encourage each other, I feel like that'll be a lot better.
Sure.
And yeah,
Sure.
so
Well, I think there's a sense of excitement now about what your next book might be. I don't know what you're thinking of or what you're working on, but it sounds like you've got a lot of experiences. Maybe you'll surprise us in a few months with the book number 3.
yeah,
Uh,
I mean, I have been working on a new project recently. It's funny because I won't give away too much, but I feel like it's the most marketable book that I have to date, because I don't know, because one thing about book marketing is that it's very difficult. I mean, and this it's a very saturated market. There's a lot of competition, and I feel like to have like a book that stands out, you need to be able to pitch it very quickly and very efficiently. And like my other two books, like they're well written, they've been reviewed well, so I know they were like they're not terrible books. But
sure, sure.
if you ask me to pitch them right away, it'd be very hard for me to do that. I'll have to like explain this part and that part and this character and that character. But this new
No,
idea that I have is kind of like, okay, it's kind of like it kind of accumulates my recent experiences and my recent like interest in terms of storytelling and writing and that kind of
yeah.
thing. And yeah, I'm
Ex-
like, I mean, I'm looking forward to finishing
It's
it.
Yeah, like you say, it's very tough to break in, but I mean, look what happened with the Harry Potter series. I mean, I don't know how many she wrote, but I think it was about 5 or 6 I don't even remember. But look how that took off. But
Yeah,
those are the exceptions, probably.
yeah. I mean, one story that I kind of associate with more is like, who Kurt Vonnegut is, the guy who wrote Slaughterhouse-Five. I watched a documentary with him recently, and it was a very interesting piece about like it was basically about like a young fan who grew up with the books and then sought out Kurt Vonnegut and sort of like piecing together his life from start to end. So very interesting stuff. But one thing that they mentioned in a documentary is that like he really got his big break when he was 48 years old. He's been writing since then, but when he finally broke through at 48 years old, all the other books followed afterwards. So essentially, like all the work he did wasn't in vain. It all followed like the success that he had with Slaughterhouse-Five. So and then I think about also like Van Gogh, like the artist from the Netherlands. I mean, that guy, he's been paint. I don't know if this is 100% true, but apparently he wasn't famous in like his like physical life, you know. So that's a, you know, so I'm in no rush, is what I'm saying, you know. Like I I'm in no rush. Maybe like one day I'll write that book that everyone globally is really interested in, and that will allow the other books that I've written in the past to follow.
Right.
Maybe it'll take me a year, maybe 10 years, but I mean, it took me about 8 to 10 years to learn how to be a good writer. It may take me 10 more years to become a good book marketer, and that's okay. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
whatever the time it takes, and I love what I do anyways. So I'm in no rush, as I just said. So
I think, I think you have a very good attitude about all this. And I know that, like you said, if that's half the battle right there, to have the patience that you have, and the desire to do well, those are great. I think you have what it takes. So
I
uh,
appreciate that. Well,
keep
time and experience taught me. You know, if you would have asked me that question at 19 years old, I would have gave you a very different answer about my expectations about, you know, my trajectory and stuff. But you know, time and
yeah.
experience is the best teacher, as they say.
I'm wearing a Yankee hat. Have you been to New York?
Yeah, I went about 6 years ago with my ex-girlfriend. It was good. I mean, I saw the sights, you know. I had the feeling though when I left that I didn't really see New York though. I'm not sure if I heard that's a very common feeling. I remember I was in like the shuttle bus on the airport, and there was all these restaurants and all these things that were by my hotel, and I just didn't know they were there. And I just thought to myself, like, I should definitely go back. There's so much I haven't seen, but like I did all the tourist sites. I thought I did everything, but it turns out I didn't even scratch the surface. So
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I've been, but I definitely would be interested to go back one day, you know?
sure. Well, maybe they'll have like a New York. I'm sure they have a New York book fair there that I'll keep my eyes open. If I hear about it, I'll let you know. That might be good for you to go to that.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I mean,
Yeah,
it's the center of publishing, advertising, the arts. So yeah, I mean, if you
yeah,
get if that'd be a really great
sure.
opportunity. So yeah.
I'll keep my eyes open for you. But I want to thank you, Ian, for taking the time to be with us. I think everyone's going to enjoy this interview very much. You have quite an interesting story, and a large breadth of experiences. So keep up the great work. And
I I
good.
appreciate that. And you know, I'm this is like a very interesting and cool experience for me because I've done a lot of interviews when I was a journalist. It's not every day someone wants to interview me about my life experience and my things that I'm up to. So I really appreciate that too. I mean, it's
Sure.
I'm
One.
not sure if I'm not sure if I come off a little nervous, but I've been
No,
nervous
no,
before, but you
excellent.
know, so
It's
so
excellent. One last question. What you mentioned the Mexican website that you work for the news. What is that? Which one is that called? Maybe we can look at that. It's
it's
English.
called
What's it
yeah,
called?
it's called Mexico News Daily. I've started to freelance and start to write and contribute articles to that website. It basically talks about Mexican news and for an English speaking audience. And
Okay.
I've written a lot of like lifestyle pieces about like day trips you could take and restaurants to go to. So little like fun topics like that, you know. And
Okay. Okay.
yes,
Excellent. Ian, thank you so much for everything you're doing for Montreal, and keep up the great work. You're the next Saul Bellow maybe, or Mordecai Ruthler. Mordecai
yeah,
Ruthler. You know?
oh yeah, that'd be amazing. And I appreciate your support too, Rabbi. It really means a lot to me. And I hope to see you at the next dinner or the next event. You know,
Okay.
I'll
Excellent.
I'll make I promise to make an effort to show up and to you know, like to
Thank
make an
you.
appearance, I suppose.
Thank you so much. Regards to your family.
Yeah, you too. And yeah, we'll see
Yes.
each other again soon.
Thanks.